Well, hello, hello, hello. Good evening and welcome to, I can't believe this, week 14. 14 of Hathor hosts. I am so happy to have you all here and just thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for being here, for watching Hathor hosts, for supporting it every week. I cannot tell you how much that means to me. I am so excited about tonight's guest. The incredible Jennifer Spence is with us, and I see she is in the room, so I am going to see if we can connect, and hopefully it'll work, and we will have an amazing evening ahead of us, or afternoon, depending on where you are. Hope everyone's doing well. Yay!
Yay! It worked!
It worked. I'm so happy.
I did not think that was going to happen. That's awesome.
I'm amazed. Well done, because you were like, I haven't done this before.
I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. Let me turn up the volume. There we go. How are you, buddy?
I'm really good, thanks. Really good. And thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's nice to see you. It's so cool that you're doing this.
Oh, thank you very much. Well,
yeah.
You know what? It was one of those crazy ideas that came to me kind of late at night. And I just thought, with all the things cancelled this year, and that was like at the beginning of the whole epidemic, with pandemic, before we knew what was ahead.
No
and I was like, oh, I'll just do a few and it'll be fine. And then, life will get back to normal. Thanks for playing.
Not so much.
Yeah. Not so much.
Cut to a year and a half later.
Exactly. 14 weeks later, here we are. But it's been such a great way to get to know everyone better and kind of connect with everyone who, people who've had conventions cancelled and stuff like that. So it's just been amazing to be able to do that.
Totally. That's great. And I just appreciate all the work that you put into it, all this research and, it's really generous what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That's really lovely. Somebody's saying how much they love your library behind us. I have to say, it's very impressive. And I'm wondering, you're in like a roll neck or polo neck. Is it cold there?
It's a t-shirt, a turtleneck. Yeah, I'm in Vancouver and it's like 17 degrees Celsius. So what is that in Fahrenheit? It would be like,
I don't know. I do Celsius.
70 or something.
Yeah.
It's not warm. It's not like it hasn't been the greatest summer here so far. So
yeah, no, here neither. I mean, on top of it, but we've had some amazing days, like 32 degrees, incredible.
Oh, wow.
But of course, it's like, we can't go anywhere. And so people are just sort of sitting with a window open going,
I remember what it was like.
Exactly. Well, we get an hour, so I'm going to just jump right on in, if that's all right with you.
Totally, man.
Excellent. You were born and raised in Toronto, but the first year of your life, you spent traveling with your mum and dad, and you sort of had your first celebrity encounter, shall we say, at a fountain in Montserrat.
Yeah, of all places.
Yes. Tell us what happened and who it was.
Well, my folks, I guess that's where I got my travel bug or love of travel was from them, because they've always traveled tons. Like they got married in Australia and they've just done had a lot of adventures together way before I was born. And so a few months after I was born, my dad and my mom went on their sailboat to the Caribbean, because my dad was taking this sabbatical from teaching. And so they went to the Caribbean, like just the two of them on this sailboat, like terrifying. My God, I just can't imagine having that kind of courage, bravery. I just feel like, what if something happens, But yeah, they went, and so it was just the three of us, and touring around the Caribbean and stuff. And so one of the places we stopped at was Montserrat. And my dad had me in a little backpack, how like they have those carriers or whatever. So he had me in a little backpack and was walking around. Well, my mom was back on the boat, and he was just passing by, and there was this man sitting by this fountain. And I should preface this by saying that my dad kind of lived under a rock in terms of pop culture and music and stuff like that. So he wasn't super familiar with, popular bands and groups and stuff that were of that day, right?
Yeah.
Talking a long time ago, the 70s to be specific, right? And so he wasn't up to date on that. And so he was walking by, and this guy was sitting by a fountain, and the guy said, and pardon me, I can't really do the accent that well.
That's all right.
So forgive me. But he's just like, I've got one of those too. And referring to me in the backpack. And my dad was like, oh, you mean you have a baby? And the guy was like, yeah, my wife's Oriental. I've got, you know, one of those half Japanese kids or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And my dad's like, oh, great. So they started talking a little bit and getting along. And then the guy's like, oh, do you want to come back and have a beer at my place? You know, and my dad's like, oh, well, no, I got to get back to the boat and we got like stuff to do or whatever. And so he's walking away. And this other guy says to him, is like, you know who that was? And my dad's like, yeah, the guy said his name was John. And the guy was like, it's John Lennon, man. And my dad's like, okay, well, John Lennon, John Bishop, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, like Lennon's, whatever.
Yeah,
what did he ever
no
do?
No idea. And he didn't tell my mom till like a year later, because if he told her then, she would have been like, let's go back.
I mean, that's amazing. And that he sort of picked you out. I just love that.
Oh, well, I guess, imagine, exactly. Yeah.
And then I read that your sort of aha moment with acting came from belting out, "It's a hard knock life for us."
I so, and you were saying that was like your first musical, right? Like, that's so funny. Of all, like, yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't know if you had your moment then, but like for whatever reason, it was that musical too.
Yeah.
So what is it about that musical? It's bizarre, right? But like,
I think it's because it's sort of so geared to kids and things. And you know, we'd had 3 weeks, or I can't even remember now, probably much longer than that, 5 weeks rehearsal. And I remember the opening night, kind of the curtain going up, and the kind of women, the chaperones, were saying to us, now, if you get nervous, girls, you must do this. And I remember kind of lying, because, you know, it starts in the orphanage.
Yeah.
And the curtain went up. And as she starts singing, maybe far away or maybe real nearby. Yeah. And I was like, opened one eye, and I was like, I don't feel nervous. I love this.
I was born to do this.
Yeah, I was like, hello.
That's
so
hilarious.
That was your aha moment, but it was really more Arthur Miller, I think, who sealed the deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like, I'd liked that as a kid, and so I did sort of summer camps and stuff like that, but never thought I would do it like for real as a life choice. But yeah, I did this play called The Crucible in high school with this community theater. So it was not to do with the school, it was just separate and apart. And so we did, I don't know, like 7 shows, maybe more. And I wouldn't let my parents come and see it. Like it was just sort of my thing, you know, like I just wanted it to like be my pride. And I was scared of what they'd think too, right? So so we did The Crucible, and you know, like I'm sure you've read it or you're familiar with Arthur Miller in general, and he's, you know, one of the greats. And just after that experience, I was just like, I don't care if I'm gonna be broke for the rest of my life. This is what I want to do, and it makes me happy. It feels important. Feels, you know, like it's something that is of value to do, you know. Gave me meaning, gave me a sense of coming home, I guess, right? Yeah. So I guess it was, and you know, God bless the orphan Annie too.
And I think I've seen in several interviews you've talked about this, that it's almost like a calling, you know, like acting chose us. And I feel precisely the same. I always say to people when they ask me, I'm like, if you can see yourself doing something else, do it.
Totally.
But if you genuinely feel like you can't breathe without it, or your life would stop, then go for it. You know,
that's
ups
exactly
and downs.
It.
Just do
That's
it.
exactly it. Like if you absolutely can't not do it, then you have to do it, right? But it's like, but otherwise it's just way too hard. Way too hard.
Well, you decided to do it, and do it you have and are, which is extraordinary. So you get accepted into the prestigious National Theatre School in Montreal. You graduate from there, and one of your first jobs. Well, firstly, let me ask you, how was drama school for you? Was it a happy experience?
I should jump in there, because I didn't actually graduate.
Oh,
it's like, this was one of those schools where like they ask you. Oh, not I'd high five you if I could. It's like there's so many people I know who didn't graduate from school, and so like for National Theatre School, like of course, like it's an amazing prestigious school. You learn a ton. You know, no doubt, no question. It's in Montreal, like one of the great cultural cities of Canada. You know, it's an amazing place. And it ain't easy, right? It's like sometimes you're not like in a place where you're quite ready for it. Like I went straight out of high school, and so I don't think I was quite ready to do that. Didn't have enough life experience, so didn't understand a lot about myself, like how to stand up for myself or ask for help or ask for what I needed, you know. So it was you know, a big learning curve, right? And the whole idea with theater schools, I'm not sure if this was similar to you and your experience, but a lot of theater schools, like they'll tell you, as ours did, we're here to break you down and build you back up, right?
Yep.
So it's, you know, on the one hand, I understand because they're trying to create an actor who can survive in the theater, right?
Yeah.
That's the point, to create these theatrical actors who can go to Stratford, who can go to the Globe, who can go to, you know, all the great stages of the world. That's the point. And it's not always, I think, done in the safest way, right?
Absolutely.
So
couldn't agree more. This is a further conversation we need to have another day.
Absolutely. Over drinks.
Yeah. And that was kind of for me too. I did, I think, 11 months, and just before my first year terminated, I was like, I'm miserable. I hate this. I mean, I want to act, but I don't know if I want somebody who treats me like shit to be in charge of building me back up after they've told me how rubbish I am. And it's not that I need to hear I'm great, but exactly that. It didn't feel like a safe, and I don't mean from any harmful physically.
No, not physically.
But, you know, I was quite cosseted and grew up as an only child. And so I think same thing. I just wasn't ready. Yeah. Lots of similarities there.
I think that's it, right? And it's like not, but I'm sure like as I did, I'm sure you took a lot out of it and you still probably use some of it, however, subconsciously. But yeah, it's not easy. And it's also like, you know, unless you've grown up, I think, around sports or something that's like quite competitive and quite demanding and requires a lot of commitment, it's kind of a new arena, right? So like our school was one where like they ask you to leave after each term, right? So it was after year 2, I was asked to leave because I wasn't enough of a sponge, is what they said. So, you know, so it's tricky, right? Like if you're not sort of ready or equipped to deal with like, you have to go all out and do it their way, then if you're not open to that, then I think you get kind of lost, you know? It's just like, I just don't feel good in this situation. I don't feel like they're really truly supporting me. Like I just feel like it's this agenda of, you know, this is the blanket way that each student has to learn, you know?
Well, I bet they're sorry now, because you left, and what your first professional gig was Davincis Inquest. I mean, like, legendary show.
Yeah, that's so cool that you know it, because I wasn't sure how much it's shown in the UK and stuff. So that's cool that you've seen it. I don't
know if it is shown here. I mean, I have seen it, and I don't know if that's because I lived in the States for nearly 10 years, and maybe there, but I know all about it. And you had to tell us about how that felt, having your sort of very first gig be this very well-known show.
Yeah, well, because it was like one of those shows where it's like you see, you know, I'd watched a lot of it because it was like, oh, this is a Vancouver show. It's been around for, I think at that time, a number of seasons already. And, you know, so it was like the thing that you have to study as an actor. It's like, make sure you're watching the show so you understand the tone and you understand like Davinci's Inquest is really natural. There's like, no, you know, you got to be really small and natural and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so I was really, you know, it was quite a thrill to get that. And so, yeah, so the idea behind this one is that, or this particular episode that we shot, was that the scene I was in, they were shooting it as all one shot. So for folks who aren't in the film industry who might not know what that means, it just means that there's no cutting. And in the edit, they'll just show from beginning to end this one scene. They won't cut between this person and then show this person's point of view and this person. It's just all one shot, like in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Like when they walk into the restaurant through the kitchen and the tables and all the people are pulling, all that is one shot. It's never cut. So that's the idea, right? So the idea being that there's kind of a lot of pressure because like if one person screws up, then they have to start from the very beginning. You can't just like start your line over because you can cut it later or whatever, you know? So the assistant director had called the night before and just said, just so you know, this is what we're going to be doing. It's going to be one shot. And so you have to really know your lines, because if you screw up, then that's it, you know. So it's like, okay, good to know. And yeah, so it was quite, you know, it was a good challenge to have, and probably a good like lesson to learn early on, where even if it's not all one shot, you should know your lines, right? So
yeah, exactly. And also the lovely showrunner, Chris Haddock, was very nice and came up to you and gave you a backstory, which when I read that, I was like, what?
That never happens.
Never. I mean,
happens.
You know, and everyone, that's just, so did that kind of set the tone for you? Did you think, well, this is it now, I'm set?
Yeah, well, it really helped, right? Because he just came up and gave a bit of a backstory of where my character had come from. Because again, it wasn't a big role. This was like my first role. It wasn't a huge one, but he still had something to give me, which would then inform the scene. And then Nicholas Campbell, who's a you know, incredible actor, so good, and he did a lot of improv and stuff too, so that would keep you on your toes as well. So it was like having to really listen, right? Because if he throws something at you, you can't just keep repeating the same line you were before, you know. So it was a great experience for that reason, because it really felt like, you know, oh, these are like really artists, you know, like they really care about this, right? So
absolutely. Well, what an amazing first experience to have.
Yeah.
And
no, cool.
As I was looking at your credits and watching quite a lot of your work, there were things that sort of struck me. One is your versatility, which we're going to talk about later. But I also think you possess a really special quality, and that is that you are not, it's difficult to put you in a casting box. And I think that's such a great gift. It sort of goes hand in hand with the kind of versatility. But I love that you're not put in a boxable. Very bad English, but you know what I mean. You defy casting stereotypes, and I love that. And I really, that was something that just really struck me quickly when looking at your work. And it's really exciting to see. And obviously tonight we're just going to dip in and out, because it's 20 minutes in, and I'm like, we've got 2 credits. So you followed Davincis Inquest, playing opposite the brilliant Hank Azaria in the pilot of Huff, and then Kirstie Alley in Right and Wrong. At that stage, they were very, very big stars in their careers. Did you kind of feel a difference walking on set? Or was it just like, no, just another day at the office, another opportunity to lean?
No, I can't deny it was totally like a thrill to be like, whoa, Hank Azaria, cool, you know. And that was actually a great experience as well, because he was very open. Like he wasn't, you know, I mean, this is in the day and age, God, I sound so old. This is in the day and age before everyone was like on their phone the whole time in between takes, right? Like now that's sort of, unfortunately, often what it's become, at least in North America. People are often on their phones in between takes, but he wasn't like dashing off and doing things and distracted. Like he was present the whole time, even when it wasn't his coverage. And in between setups, he was like, you want to run lines? I was like, sure, you know,
which is amazing.
Yeah, never happened. So I was lucky to have, you know, positive experiences early on, because, you know, we've all had bad experiences, and I can only imagine if you're just starting out, you have a bad one, that's got to be pretty traumatic, you know. So I was lucky. Yeah.
Your first foray into sci-fi was in the fantastic show The 4400, where you had a lovely character art playing the character Joanna. Tell us a little bit about your casting process and about the character, or your audition process, I should say.
Yeah, the audition process was, that's one of the things about Vancouver. I mean, again, things have changed since COVID. Now we don't know what's going to happen, right? But a lot of times in Vancouver, you know, we have a lot of American shows that shoot here, and the directors and producers are here because they're shooting other episodes or what have you. And so if it's an episodic show where each like week or every other week they have to hire a whole new set of guest stars and stuff, then they'll often be in the room for the audition. So it won't just be you and the casting director and the reader. It'll be like a full producer and director session. So they were there for that. And so that was helpful to get like redirection in the room and stuff, so they could see if I could take direction. And yeah, so it was pretty straightforward that way. I did learn a lot though from that, because again, it was just not knowing at that time that it's like, that it's okay to make choices, you know. I guess I was so stuck in like, oh, I'm a secondary character, I shouldn't pull focus, I'm just here to move the story forward, you know, that kind of thing, that I think I held back a little bit, you know. So I did learn that from that, where it's just like, you still have to have something to give. You know,
Yeah.
you can't just be like, don't just fall into the trap where you're just like a walking piece of scenery, you know?
Yeah. But as you said, I think that's something that comes very much with experience and learning.
Yeah.
And this was relatively early on in your career.
Yeah.
David, I know that she was in the call before this. Sorry, somebody's just mentioned that you were in the call. As I said, we would be here all night if we did every single credit. I've tried to just sort of dip in and out of the probably the most well-known ones and the ones that I find interesting, frankly. I was going to say on the 4400, there were a lot of heavyweights in the cast, including a future Oscar winner, Mahershala Ali. Did you sense right away that there was something really special in the chemistry in the cast?
I mean, I was pretty like I when I just watched the odd bit of the show before I did it and stuff, I was like, oh yeah, these actors are great, and I just thought the idea was really cool. So I was like, this is, again, you know, not being a huge sci-fi fan myself, I always feel like so blasphemous, but you know, in general, I wasn't, you know. So when I could see what the story was and stuff, I'm like, oh, this is like really cool. Like, and if more sci-fi is like this, then I can get behind it, you know?
Yeah.
Just in my taste, right?
Yeah. And speaking of more sci-fi, lovely segue. I was going to say, shortly after that, you auditioned for Stargate Universe.
Yes.
Which we all know how that turned out. And you got to play the brilliant Dr. Lisa Park, who finds herself on board the Destiny. Tell us a little about that audition, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so that audition, I think like a number of other actors that wound up getting cast, is we all read for different parts, right? So I read for, I think, 2 other roles before I was cast as Lisa Park. And I think the idea originally was that my character of Lisa Park was actually a male character named Miles, I think Miles Henry or something. So it was actually written as a male character, but then I guess they, you know, Brad is great, and all the producers and writers were, you know, they're good, intelligent people, so they're probably like, we need a woman in this, you know, can't all be men scientists. So so they, you know, I guess they converted the role to female, and then along with, you know, Peter Lamis and Patrick Gilmore and stuff, we were like the sort of little busybody scientists. So
You said before that you relate to her nerdiness. Are you nerdy? Are you super nerdy?
Totally. Yeah, totally. Like I'm bad at sports.
Yeah. Oh, you're frozen. Don't worry, it'll come back. There we go. But now we've lost your sound. Oh no. Wait. Can't hear you. We can't hear you. Is it just me or can't hear you? For some reason, I've lost your sound. I don't know why. Anybody else, or is it just me on my end? Can you hear me? Oh no. Can you hear me, Jen? Oh no. Can nobody hear me? You can just hear me? Can't hear her. What I might do, if you can hear me, Jen, is I might cancel this and then get you back in the conversation, because we can't seem to hear you. And I know this has happened before on other lives. I watched a live yesterday and it happened to the casting director. So let me take you out, and then I'm going to come back and get you back, hopefully. So let's see, Jen. Oh, there's always something, isn't there, with Instagram? Why is that? Right, let's try this again, shall we? Right, we're connecting. Hello. There we go.
Okay, yes.
Don't worry. Do you know what? I think there's definitely something up with Instagram, because I was watching a live yesterday. And the same thing happened. It froze and then they lost sound, and anyway, we figured it all out. That'll confuse everybody later when they're watching it.
Yeah, it's just par for the course.
Yeah, and of course, right in the middle of you telling a lovely story. So we were talking about being super nerdy.
Oh yeah, couldn't remember what I was talking about. Yeah.
And you were saying you like not very good at sport, and you really related to that part of her.
Yeah, absolutely. Just I guess more than anything, the feeling of being a fish out of water, right? Not
Yeah,
quite fitting in, or try to find your place, right?
absolutely. You
Yeah.
had an inordinate amount of sort of techno babble, quite complicated dialogue. How do you approach learning tricky dialogue like that?
I just repeat it over and over and over again. And I also try to like make sure that I understand what it is as
Yeah,
well. So I'm not just saying the words, but I actually do understand kind of what the idea is.
yeah.
Yeah.
I liked. I've read somewhere. I think that you and Brad used to like compare notes. You know, you would have a little diagram and go, "Is this right?" And then he would go, "Well, I think it's more like this or whatever." And I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, totally. Because there were some things where I was just like, I don't know what I'm saying at all. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know what this means. And I've like looked up the words and I still don't understand. And so then I'd say, does it mean this? And I kind of show them like a spaceship here and like, I don't know, FTL and all the, just like kind of making a diagram. And then he'd be like, no, no, you just show me his. So I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay.
yes. People are asking about the books in the background. But
Oh, yeah.
yes, so we will get to those if we could do those at the end, if that's all right, guys. Just because otherwise we're
Can
going to
do a
run
show
out
and
of
tell.
time. Exactly, we can do a show and tell. The writers gave Lisa a fantastic coping mechanism, shall we say, for stress. And how did you feel when you found out that she was so partial to reading? With
I was like, I thought it was hilarious, and like I was grateful because it was just like so cool to have this odd characteristic, where it was just like,
yeah,
oh, again, something that gives you more to play with, more to do. She's not just a scientist who delivers information. She's like got this bizarre secret life,
yeah.
So I was really happy they gave me something crazy like that.
And do you find sex scenes difficult to shoot? It'd be really weird if you went, no, I love them.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, they're always uncomfortable, they're always awkward, they're always
Yeah.
like, oh god, it's always that feeling of like, Jesus, and just like, it's just a lot of anxiety, right? So they're, for me, I'm sure there are people that enjoy it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
And
anxiety inducing.
yeah, and also I think it's the fact that they're heavily choreographed, kind of like a fight scene. So all the stuff that people see afterwards doesn't exist at the time. You've got somebody on top of you or you're on top of somebody, and literally they're like 20 people going, all right, lift your arm up so that your boob doesn't look so saggy, and like favor this side of his face or whatever. And you're like, oh god, it's just, yeah.
And see, that's interesting because like now I think it's that way with intimacy coordinators and stuff. Like now it's really broken down, I think, in a very technical way. But like when I did Stargate or like other sex scenes I've done, it was kind of up to us as the actors to figure it out. That was my experience, at least,
really?
right? Not everyone's, but it was just like, okay, we'll do this. And then I remember like in You, Me, Her, like my co-actor Ennis Esmer, who's fucking hilarious, so funny. Yeah. And we're trying to figure it out and stuff. And he's like, well, how about if I flip you here and we do this? And I was like, yeah, cool. And that, like, so we're figuring it out together, so it wasn't like, oh, now we want you to do this. And so it was, I think the intimacy coordinator will be a very welcome thing, so that it just demystifies the whole thing for actors, and they're not having to just sort of be like, okay, does that look okay?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Well, moving swiftly along, I know that you guys are an exceptionally close cast because all the guests that I've had on have talked about it. Are you still in touch with people from the show? Do you still chat to each other now?
Yeah, I mean, it is like the mark of something special. Like it really is. Like I really do think it's a testament to Brad Wright. Like he just brings good people together, and he brings the right people together. And it happened again with Travelers, where it's like we're all in touch. So there's something about Brad, like where he just like attracts, good people to him, I guess, because he's a good person. And then, we all wind up staying in touch. So yeah, still in touch with Louis, and of course Patrick and I worked together on other shows after that, and Calamus and I will have a forever special brother sister bond, so it's like it's definitely it doesn't just go away like a lot of shows do. The people still stay with you.
Yeah, I think that over the course of this series I've really discovered that I think SGU is kind of like a fine wine. And I sort of think it's slightly ahead of its time. And I really applaud the writers and the creators for pushing it in a different direction at the time. I know at the time it wasn't quite appreciated, but I think now it's one of those shows that's really, really going to stand up. Do you agree with that?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so, because that's what I felt. Again, because I wasn't a huge sci-fi fan, when I started watching shows or being a part of shows that were like that, I was like, well, this is the kind of sci-fi that I can really get behind and appreciate and get into, is like when it's about the people and about like the people trying to survive because of their own limitations or their own weaknesses and just like trying to survive as a human being. So yes, they may be in outer space or there may be aliens involved or something, but it's really about the people at the heart of it. And so then I'm just like, okay, I get it. I totally get it. And that's what I want to see, right? Like everyone's been telling me watch Battlestar Galactica and I still haven't seen it, right? And it's just like, because that's again relationship driven. And so to me, that's what's really interesting, is seeing what people struggle with, right? Just like the strife of being human, right?
Yeah. And particularly in an enclosed space. I mean, I know that they left the ship as well, but kind of that pressure of, a bit like us all now in lockdown, and kind of being you know, this that pressure of constant you know, powder keg. Speaking of people involved, you had some fantastic scenes with Robert Carlyle, particularly in the episode Malice. Are there any memories that particularly stand out for you working with him or anyone else?
Well, I'd always been a big fan of his, like, because my parents used to watch Hamish, and I can't remember, there were a number at Cracker, I think he did like a big part on that, guest star on that and stuff. So, and of course, Train Spotting, right? So like I'd been a fan of his to begin with, and always just thought like, this guy is amazing. Like he's just so freaking good, you know? And so yeah, so that was just really like cool to be him. And then I think, you know, there was a moment during we were shooting Malice in New Mexico, and I was like shooting a scene with Robert Carlyle, New Mexico. Like it was this moment of like, of just being really grateful, you know, like and you know, and he was really cool because like he directed an episode as well, and he always had good thoughts about scenes and stuff, and he was never an asshole about it. Like if he had a thought about a scene or thought that it should go a different way, he just communicated it well, and it was just like, oh yeah, that does make the scene better, you know, or he's right, like that actually, he was just really, everything was very well thought out and purposeful with him, you know, like nothing was casual. It was, he really knew what he was doing.
Yeah, what a treat to act opposite as well.
Totally.
At that stage in your career, that was kind of the biggest role you'd had at that point. And what life lessons did you take away from that job, if any?
Well, definitely, it was Peter DeLuise, who's, you know, I'm sure every Stargate fan knows him. He's an actor, a director, and producer, and phenomenal guy. And he directed a number of SGU episodes, and he actually gave us, me and Peter and Patrick, some advice one day that's like stuck with me till this day. And I tell other actors who are just starting out the same thing, because it's just such a obvious yet not obvious thing. And he had said, just don't wait for the writers to write stuff for you or give you a point of view or tell you how to think and feel. You know, it's like, that's you as the actor to make those decisions of like, you know, you always have a point of view. Like, how do you feel about this person or this person? Maybe you have a crush on this person, or maybe you can't stand this person or whatever. But it's just like, there's always something that you're thinking or feeling about your situation or other people. So don't wait for the writers to do that, you know? And so, for instance, Patrick took that to heart, and he decided in his mind that his character had a crush on my character. Volker had a crush on Park. And then the writers started writing that in, because they saw it, right? However subtly he was playing it, they saw it. So that was a huge lesson, where it was just like, make sure you know what you want to say and what your character thinks, you know, because it's like, you can't just wait for people to give that to you, you know? And that's like, that's empowering too, as an actor, to be like, this is my job. This is like, it's up to me to decide how my character occurs and thinks and feels, and, you know,
and evolves.
Yeah.
Sterling advice. Oh, we love Peter so much. Love Peter DeLuise.
Yeah, totally.
your next turn, being the chameleon that you are, was completely different because you turned up as a wisecracking bisexual barista, Devon, in X's and O's. Tell us a little bit about that project and the role, really. And can you make coffee?
Yeah, right? It's like, oh, we have an Nespresso machine, so it kind of does it for you, which is nice. But yeah, no, that was such a thrill because it was like the first real comedy I'd done. Because like, and I love comedies. Like it's so my heart, you know, like I just love it so much. And so it was just, we don't get a lot of comedy in Vancouver. So that was like the first sort of show where I had that opportunity. And so it was just like a dream to get to do that. And Michelle Paradise, who's the writer and creator and actor in it, and she was fantastic to work with and just open to everything. And so, you know, like if we did a teeny bit of improv, that was okay, you know, and because I wasn't sure, because there'd be the odd scene where like I'd throw in a line or whatever, and then we'd stop, and then I'd be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And then for the next scene, I wouldn't do it. And then she'd be like, no, Jen, throw that line in again. I liked it, you know? So she was just always really open
that's
to
cool.
change and play. And
that actually was going to be one of my questions. Was it helpful or a hindrance? Because, you know,
no, it was great.
Yeah. I mean, and how wonderful that she was kind of flexible and open to that. And the show is getting a lot of love, people loving it. For the audition, did they know that you were good at comedy, or was that something that just happenstance, just happened and you went in and, because you are funny.
Yeah, I think like, well, I do really love it. I love it a lot. But I think, yeah, like with the audition process, like comedy is a very obviously different genre than drama. So there can be some challenges that come with that. So I think like with casting, I think they just bring in everybody and then hope that people will find the rhythms and find the, you know, the jokes or the technique around it, if you want to call it that. So I don't think anybody knows. I think everyone's just like, oh, hopefully we'll find the right person in this group of people, you know. So yeah,
well, they certainly did. Before we chat about your next project, I just wanted to say that it's amazing for somebody who wasn't into sci-fi. You have appeared in 6 major sci-fi shows thus far in your career, and I think that is quite an incredible achievement. I mean, you must be proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really lucky, right? Like it's the shows that I've been a part of have all been like really good, you know, like they've been, again, shows that I can get behind, like not just as an actor, but as a fan, to just be like, I actually do really relate to what these people are going through, or I respect the story, I respect the world that these people live in, you know. So I was fortunate because, of course, not every show is like that. Never mind sci-fi, not every show period is like that.
Exactly.
So that those shows were actually really again mostly relationship driven, right? So so it was a good journey to go on.
Yeah. Well, speaking of relationship driven and kind of a police procedural with a sci-fi element, your next job was the smash hit Continuum, which was set in Vancouver and filming in Vancouver. How was that?
That was really cool. And that was like a weird roundabout story around it, was that like I was in England with my husband. Like we had just been in Spain with my parents and traveling around a bit and stuff. And then we went to London for a little bit because we wanted a few days in London. And so I got the self-tape request, you know, when I was in London, right? So, and this was like very beginning of January, I think like the first couple of days of January. So it was like nothing was really starting yet. So I just got this email where it's just like, they can't find anyone for this role. Do you want to, you know, record yourself in England and send us in the link, and we'll, you know, see what happens. And so I was just like, oh, so we had like, you know, it's always great to get an audition. We're always grateful we do, but oftentimes they'll come up at really inconvenient times. Right?
Yes.
It's like one of those Murphy's Law things with actors where it's like, you want to book a job, then book a trip first, and then you'll book the job. You know, happens every time.
Absolutely.
So it's just silly, right? But it was good. But I was like, and I wanted to do it and stuff. But of course, we did have plans. Like we were going to go to the Globe later that day and to the Tate, and we had like all these things and stuff. And again, like the first world problems, shouldn't complain. Happy to do it, but like it was just reorganizing our plan. And
yeah. Oh no. Oh, there you're back. Oh no, but we've lost the sound again. Right, we're gonna have to do the same thing. This is so annoying, bloody Instagram. Can you hear me? Oh no. Can everyone hear me? Anyone hear me, I should say. Why does it do this? Every week a new challenge. Right, I'm gonna do the same thing. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Actually, I'll tell you what, everyone. I'm actually gonna go off. Can you hear me, Jen? Just nod your head if you can. I'm going to go off and then we'll come back on. Yes, I know. We know we understand that. So we're going to go off, stop the live, and then we'll start a whole new one. And that'll also buy us a little more time. Is that okay? Can you hear me, Jen? Is that cool? Yes? I don't know if she can hear me. Let me just say, God, I've never done this before. Oh my God. I'm trying to type, everyone, as well. This is challenging. Let's start a new conversation. Oh God, I haven't typed that. Right. So that hopefully she'll see that. God, how do I get rid of this now? Oh my God. Ah! Right, everyone, I will be back in 2 minutes. See you shortly. Fingers crossed this is going to work. Yes, are we working? Hopefully we have got rid of the gremlins and hopefully you guys can hear me. Oh, 3 times a charm. I mean, honestly, what a nightmare. Right, let's try this one more time. I'm so sorry. Oh, it seems to be that the gremlins come out in full force. Is it full moon or something? Yeah.
Is it working?
It's working.
Yay!
Oh
Yay.
my goodness.
Don't touch it anymore.
I know, really. And it's like, is the moon full or something like that? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it could be me too, because a lot of electronics malfunction around me.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. So it could be me.
Yeah. I know. Hopefully next time when we do the show, if the show continues, I would very much like to be able to do it face to face.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be so cool.
That will. Oh, thank you very much, everyone, for bearing with us and for coming back into the room. So we're talking about Continuum. You played the fabulous Betty Robertson. You were saying you got the audition while you were in London. So she was a cyber specialist as well as a police officer. How did you prepare for that? How did you have to learn, again, tons and tons of like tricky dialogue and stuff like that?
Yeah, there was a ton of technobabble. So it was most of my focus went into that, was just learning the dialogue. And again, just trying to make sure that I understood kind of what the idea was, even if I didn't understand programming or the dark web or, at least I could have had an idea of what things were and stuff. So that was helpful. In terms of like police training though, I didn't do any of that. There was one episode where I had to hold a gun and stuff. So I was just like, I want to make sure that I know that it looks like I know what I'm doing, because I would have had training, Yeah. So I asked like a family friend who's a cop to like just teach me how to hold a gun and stuff. And so that was helpful. And then on the day that we shot that scene, because there was a scene where it's kind of like almost a fantasy sequence, because we're playing this virtual reality game. Mm-hmm. And so we have, these crazy guns and outfits, costumes on and stuff. And there was also a military guy on set who really helped me out that day too, of just how to hold it and how to walk and stuff. So yeah. It's just good to get a quick, crash course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just going to say, one of the questions was, how are you around technical things? But I think we've answered that.
We know that now.
The show debuted to exceptionally high reviews and ratings, like smash hit out the gate. Were you guys aware of that when you were on the show? Like immediately?
No, I wasn't immediately, but as time went on, it was just like, oh, it's great. It's really, got a good fan base and people are really interested in it. And I think, the fact that it was set in Vancouver really brought a lot of people on too that weren't necessarily into sci-fi because they were interested. And so, and it was just like a good story. Like Simon just made up a cool world and created a cool show. And so I think people, just really responded to that. And it was just like, kind of prophetic too in a lot of ways. So it was cool.
Absolutely. And I was reading or watching an interview with Simon, and he was saying that it almost didn't happen because he had this idea, but he'd been pitching to American companies and to American studios and networks and things. And so that was always the plan. And then like suddenly he got an appointment, or his friend got an appointment at Showcase, and they were like, he rang him and he was like, I have nothing to pitch. And he was like, pitch this and just see. And they were like, my God, we love it. Like they completely got it right away, which is amazing.
So crazy. Yeah.
What were your absolute sort of, if you can give us like your best three moments from Continuum, from your time in Continuum?
Oh, well, actually, the first thing that comes to mind is working while recovering from Norwalk virus. Like, I don't know if you've had Norwalk, or I'm sure
no
have, but it's like the word. It's just like projectile vomiting, projectile out of both ends.
Yes, I think we just call it the norovirus here.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Same thing.
Oh my God, you poor thing.
So I had that, and so it was just like you can't go to work. There's just no way you can go to work when you're like, you literally have to go to the bathroom every 2 minutes to either puke or other stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so that was the first and only time I've ever like not been able to go to work. And so it was just like, oh God, what's gonna happen and stuff. And I had to go to the hospital, get like rehydrated and like, because it was just like I couldn't stop puking, right? So it was like needed to get a Gravol shot because I couldn't keep Gravol down. So it was just like, anyway, so I couldn't go to work that day, but I had to go the next day because like it had subsided. I still was sick, but at least I wasn't projectile vomiting anymore. So so that was like so I had to go to work even though it was just like, oh my God. So that was, I guess I feel like that's a very memorable moment because of just having to like work through that and not eating anything, right? Because it was just like I was worried I wouldn't be able to keep it down. So it was just like, oh, I'm just gonna show up as this shell of a person and hope that the scenes go okay.
I'll tell you a funny story. Norovirus is responsible for me getting a job too, actually.
Oh, really?
I auditioned for the musical Mamma Mia in the West End, and I had like, first round, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, and finally it was like the final day. And my audition was on the Monday, and on the Friday I came down with this virus, and on the Sunday I phoned my agent and I was like, listen, I can barely stand, let alone sing. I'm like, it's spewing out of every end.
You can't leave the bathroom.
Yeah, she was like, let's see how you go tomorrow and then we'll make the decision. And I woke up the next day and I was like, I'm gonna go. But I just remember thinking like, I'm never going to get this job now. I've come so far. But actually it was the best thing in the world because I got out of my own way. I was so busy focusing on like not throwing up that I didn't worry about being nervous. And when it came to singing, I was just like, out it came. So not like that.
But I've heard that before, that it can be like a blessing in disguise being sick for auditions or work, because like you're saying, you get out of your own way. You're not in your head. You're just too busy thinking about either not throwing up or just like getting through the scene, and you just like, you stop fucking around. You're too tired. Sorry, I don't know if you can swear. Yeah. You're too tired, right? So it's just like, you just gotta get through it.
Absolutely. Well, on that lovely subject, we'll neatly move away. We'll sail down river. See what I did there?
Nicely done.
So your next project that I wanted to talk about was very, very dear to your heart for several reasons. One of them being that it was written and directed by your lovely husband, Ben Ratner. Before we chat about working together and the whole husband-wife dynamic and everything, tell us a little bit of what it's about and who inspired it.
Yeah, so it was inspired by a good friend of my husband's named Babs Chula. Sadly, she passed away almost 10 years ago now, which is hard to believe. But she was a huge sort of mentor in the community, really well loved, and not just wise, but just hilarious, inappropriate, you know, all those things, right? And she'd been working quite a long time in both theater and film, and again, just a beloved figure in the community. And so she had had cancer, so she'd had quite a long battle with that, and had done a number of different treatments and flown to India and done all sorts of things to try to heal from it. And so so her sort of process, and my husband Ben's experiences with her and their friendship inspired the film. And yeah, the film is it's inspired by her. So it really is about like a number of young women who are looking up to her as a mentor, and they're on the verge of their own breakdowns and breakthroughs, and she's guiding them along the way, all whilst going through her own difficulty. So yeah. Ultimately, ultimately an uplifting story, though, even though there's, you know, a lot of hardship. It's ultimately a life-affirming story.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I'd never heard of Babs Schieffer until researching this project or researching you. And what an amazing woman. I mean, she
totally
a life force, you know,
yeah.
An absolute mensch.
Yeah. See, and that's exactly it, right? It's just there was something special about her, like you having not met her, but you just like having watched her perhaps or read something about it, just like, wow, there's something about this woman that's like, she is one of a kind, you know?
Yeah. And so your husband wrote the role of Aki for you. How was that kind of the working on set, director, actor, and then getting in the car, going home, and now you're husband and wife? Like, how did you manage to balance that?
Yeah, it was challenging for sure. I mean, like, I think we ultimately did well once we got into production, but like before we started shooting, it was, you know, there was a lot of stress leading up to it. And so, you know, we were given the very good advice where it's just where we should treat each other as we would, I would treat any other director and he would treat any other actor, instead of it being like, oh, we're also married so we can get away with bad behavior. You know, it's like, no, let's pretend that we're actually professionals and treating each other as we would those other roles, you know? So that really helped a lot. But yeah, it's like anything, right? Where there's like a crossover between personal and professional relationships. You got to find those boundaries, and you're going to mess up, and hopefully you'll find find your way through it. So.
And it sounds like it was a really intense shoot, because I think you filmed it in 16 days. Is that right?
It was something like that. It was, something like that. It wasn't very long, but I mean, that's the thing about like indie film, and you know, it's just like, it's, for me, there's just nothing like being on an indie film set, because everyone is there for the greater good. You know, every single person is there because they want to be, and they want to make this a good project, you know, and everyone cares so much. So it's just like the love keeps you going, you know, like, so you feel like it's crazy, but you feel so supported that, you know, you can do it too.
Yeah. Know? And it must have been very stressful for him as well. I mean, there was a story that did he sleep direct one night?
Yeah. So this is like weeks after we finished shooting, like weeks after, right?
Oh, and, okay.
Like we weren't even like, it was done at this point. And I tend to go to bed quite late. I'm a bit of a night owl, and he's more of a and so I was still up, like watching TV or something, and I heard him get out of bed and go into the kitchen. I just hear all this rummaging and stuff, right? So I go into the kitchen, I'm like, what's going on, you know? And he's like, when do we put you in the wetsuit? Because like there's a scene in Downriver where I'm in a wetsuit, and I'm like, sweetie, we've already done that. We shot that scene a few weeks ago, you know, like we're done now. And he's just like, no, like, the kitchen's a mess, like the place can't be a mess, like the people are going to be here in a second, like get like, and then he's like, I'm the director. I'm like, sweetie, I think you need to go back to bed now.
You're sleepwalking and directing.
And he's like looking into my eyes, right? So that's what was so weird. Like it's not like he's like, oh, well, you need to do this. It's like you're looking into each other's eyes.
His eyes were open.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it's just really like weird. It's really freaky. It's freaky, right? Yeah.
Wow. Well, it was a labor of love, and I'm delighted to say
it's all worth it in the end.
Exactly. Not only were you nominated, I think, for something like 13 Leo Awards, but you won 5. The film won 5, including Best Picture, Best Screenwriting for your husband, and Best Supporting Actress for you. So
Yeah.
tell us about that night and how that felt.
Yeah, that was a really special night because it was like, you know, like you're saying, it was a labor of love, and we didn't know ultimately how it would be received or if people would appreciate it as much as we, you know, had our hearts in it and stuff. So it's always a never know, right? So that was a really, yeah, special evening, you know, like awards shouldn't matter and all that kind of thing. But it was, it did mean a lot to feel like that the community, that it meant something to them too, you know? And so sometimes I guess awards can function in that capacity where you just feel like, oh, they really saw it, you know? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, clearly they're seeing your work, because again, looking you up, I was like, gosh, you've been nominated for every recurring role that you've played, twice in a row for SGU, for Continuum and for Travelers, which we're going to talk about shortly. So yeah, how do you feel about awards? I love them.
I know it's so tricky, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
because I see both sides, right? Like I certainly absolutely see the side where it's just like, how can you judge art? Like how can you judge artists and what they're doing? Like, so you're saying this performance is better than this performance? Like I don't think you can actually really say that, you know? If you can, then who gives you the right to say that? You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's very, it's weird to judge things in that way. So I don't know. On the other hand, it's I guess there's value in them in terms of see, I don't know. I don't even know the answer to that, because I was gonna say there's value in it because you're striving for a certain level, but you're not striving just so you can get an award. You're striving to make the best thing you can make, right? So
yeah, but I think there's something special about being acknowledged by your peers, you know, getting an award that's like your peers telling you that you're really great or that your work is great. And what a, you know, everyone, a great opportunity to get dressed up in a fantastic frock and free booze. I'm in.
Yeah.
I've never won anything, so there you go, ever.
Yet.
Yet. I'm not giving up hope yet.
Just getting started.
Next up, I wanted to chat about your return to the wonderful world of Brad Wright and the smash hit that, of course, was Travelers. How did the role come your way? Did you have to audition for them again, or did they just go, hey, Jen, we've got this role for you?
Yeah, no, so I auditioned originally for the role of Kat, played by Leah Cairns. And so it's just like, again, it's just so interesting how casting works, because I just can't imagine Leah not playing that role. Like, it's just so perfect for, like, she's so perfect for it. And it was just like, so it's just in works, right? And how different roles and different actors work and stuff. But yeah, there's no question she was absolutely the right person for that role. But so I'd auditioned for that, and then later I auditioned for Grace, and Brad was in the room for both those auditions, and so he said, you know, just so you know, Grace, right now you're auditioning for a guidance counselor, but she does later become quite different. So it's not just what's on the page here today. It will change or whatever. And so that was really cool to know that. And then he later told me, I just feel silly, but you know, later he told me that he'd written the role with me in mind, and so, but he, you know, we need to go through the audition process to make it official and stuff. So it was that was really cool.
Yeah, I'll say that's amazing. And I've just realized, actually, with Eric McCormack, of course, from Will and Grace, you were his Grace in this.
Yeah.
Will and Grace. Did you ever have moments where you were like, holy shit, that's Will from Will and Grace? Although he was so different, right?
He was so different, right? Like, he was so different. And it was, you know, it was a real privilege working with him, because we learned so much, like, not just like technique learning from him as an actor, but he just really taught, like, for myself, like, I just learned a lot about ensemble from him, you know. Like, I mean, he's been a part of, you know, one of the greatest ensembles in the world for, you know, how many seasons did they do? Ultimately 11, 12. So, you know, he knows what that means. And you know, again, like, you always hear it, that the lead always sets the tone for a show, right?
Yeah.
And that's, so there's a reason people say that, because it's true, you know. So if you get someone who's not the greatest person to be around, or not happy or whatever, that's all going to trickle down and everyone's going to feel it, you know. And Eric is just one of those people who just gets it, you know. Like he wasn't just an actor on the show, he was also a producer, and he also directed some episodes. So he was really, you know, it was his baby as much as it was Brad's. But he just he's one of the good eggs, you know, and he gets how to keep people together. And I just remember at the end,
Oh no, we've lost your sound again. No. She can't hear me. Wait, can't hear you. I'm going to go out and come back in. Stay there. You and then get you back. Right, Jen, I'm coming. Don't worry. Oh, tonight is crazy. Don't worry. I'm waiting. It's connecting. Yay! There we go. For some reason, oh no, she's left. Come back, Jen. Let me connect with you, Jen. For some reason, every time her what's the thingy freezes, every time her phone freezes, then we lose her sound. Waiting for Jennifer Spence. Come on. How cool.
Hear her.
Yay!
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. No, I can't hear you. Okay. Can
you hear me now?
I can. But first I couldn't. I was just like, oh no. Okay. Has this ever happened?
This is when we need. No, this is unusual. And yeah, I don't know what it is, but we're going to persevere because we're almost there. And the picture is very pixelated now as well. It keeps sort of breaking up. So no, Dora, it'll calm down. We'll be very still. Oh no. Wait, yeah, I can hear you. So don't worry. Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So for the moment, the picture is frozen, but we can hear you. So I was going to say, it reunited you with a vast swathe of the Stargate family.
Yeah.
And how was that? What did it feel like having being directed by Amanda Tapping, who directed a huge block of shows? Yeah. How was that experience?
It was fantastic. It was just like, again, just like that bond doesn't go away just because a show ends. So it was so nice to have those people around again, you know. And Amanda, I'd never oh no, that's not true. I worked with her on Continuum as a director, but I'd never worked with her as an actor before. So that was fun to get to do that on Travelers. And she, as a director, she just gives you so much room as the actor to explore and play. And, you know, she's very deliberate and what's the word? Just strategic with her directions, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say she strikes me very much as an actor's director.
Yeah, totally. She was, and just good vibes, right?
Yeah, completely. Oh my God, we love her. The Grand Empress of Sci-Fi, indeed.
Totally.
Now, on my end, guys, your picture is still frozen, and it's kind of just I've got a little circle, like it's trying to connect with you, but I can hear you.
Okay.
But I don't know if I'm robbing people of your lovely, beautiful face, and I don't know if we should maybe try and go off and on again.
We can try it again, because for me, for where I'm at, everything's clear. I can see you clearly, hear you clearly, and I can see me clearly and hear me clearly. But it's up to you. We can totally try again if you want, or we can
let me
run it out.
Let me try. I'm going to sort of remove you from the conversation and then get you back in. So bear with me. Okay, guys, I'm really sorry. This has been, tonight's been on another level with Gremlins, hasn't it? I mean, fucking hell. We're hilarious. We're trying. Make them laugh, make them laugh. Can we hear you and we can see you? Hallelujah.
You can see me? Okay, sweet.
Right.
I swear, it's my
It is. It's your juju. You're weird, like.
I'm very. I apologize for my terrible effect on technology.
Don't worry, David Blue and I had a challenge as well. We eventually had to leave Instagram altogether and go onto his Twitch channel, which I'd never done. So I was a bit like, anyway.
Never even heard of it.
Yes, well, there you go. So getting back to Grace, what an amazing character, because you got to play the hell out of that. This sort of, again, complete opposites, because of course she does become Traveler 0027. Tell us how you approached that, and did you find that liberating, playing someone who was so...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. No, it was like some of the most fun I've ever had, on a role. It was just because, I mean, who doesn't want to just say what's on their mind and not beat around the bush and just like, speak out all your inner thoughts. Like, and it was totally liberating and fun. And, I also wondered too, towards the beginning of playing her, I was just like, I wonder if she's maybe even somewhere on the spectrum, so it's not that she's necessarily like wanting to be sarcastic or rude or whatever, but it's just not quite understanding that it's not maybe appropriate all the time to say inappropriate things, right? Or be really honest, like maybe there's a more diplomatic way of putting that. She just doesn't understand that. It's just not within her mental chemistry. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was so much fun.
The show struck me as very character driven, and it's so much about these people having to make very often exceptionally difficult choices. Do you think that, in your opinion, is that one of the reasons why it was so popular?
Yeah, I think it's like, because again, like what is more interesting than a group of people, a group of humans in these extraordinary circumstances having to make like life and death decisions based on their own integrity, based on their own conscience, their own battles, it was fascinating to me. Fascinating. It's just like, because again, it's just exploring human nature. Like, to me, there's nothing more fascinating than human nature. It's just like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to make the wrong decision for the world because you love your wife?
Yeah.
It's just like, these aren't easy questions,
Exactly.
So it's,
and I think that you have a real affinity to playing kind of complex, interesting, layered women, and it's really exciting to watch.
Oh, thank you, Suanne. Well, that means a lot.
You changed tack once again in your next project, the fabulous You, Me, Her, in which you play Carmen. And I have to say, I watched quite a lot of that in anticipation of tonight.
Oh, cool.
And you are a bloody revelation in it. You are so funny. Oh. And not only that, you have, I think, a really tough job because you're the straight man, the straight guy. And often in a comedy act, there's the pratfaller and then the kind of straight man. And it's a much more difficult ask, I think, in my opinion. Have you relished exploring your comedy bones?
Absolutely. Again, just because I love comedy so much, it was such a joy to get to be a part of this ensemble where it was like, that's the job, is to have these comedic situations. And the first season that we shot, we had a wonderful director named Nisha Ganatra on it, who's directed Transparent and all sorts of shows, and she really worked from a place of finding things organically and building trust with each other as an ensemble and all that, and also encouraging improv. So there were a lot of off the cuff moments and a lot of things we found together in the moment. So it was just a orgasm.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when I was watching it, two things kind of struck me. One is the writing feels almost quite British, quite English. But it absolutely has a feeling of that kind of like improvised. There are all these wonderful like little throwaways and great deadpan comedy coming from you. I mean, was that on the page, or did that come from those improvised sessions? Or a bit?
No, I think a lot of it was on the page. Yeah. Jonathan Scott Shepherd, who is the creator and the writer and stuff, he just has a really strong comedic voice, and so that was, when I first read the pilot script, the script that I auditioned with, I was just like, oh, thank God, some comedy and some like, you know, what do you want to call it? Not tidy comedy either, you know, not just like simple and polished. It's just like, oh, this is like, there's a lot of room in this, and there's, it can be kind of raunchy and like all, you know, so it was, I really liked it a lot, and his writing. So I think that there it was already there on the page. And then sure, we did explore a lot ourselves as well. And so there was some great moments that came from that as well.
Yeah. You've said in the past that Carmen is the most like you out of characters that you've played. In what ways?
I guess it sounds not very nice to say, but I guess because I'm just kind of, I'm kind of cynical, kind of a cynical person.
No.
It's like, I think in my heart, I'm an optimist, like, but you know, overall, I guess I can tend to be quite cynical and suspicious and definitely sarcastic. There's some commonalities there, as well as just like, you know, getting older, right? You just start to, that's what was one of her sort of arcs, was just like, oh, just grappling with getting older and not feeling cool anymore. Not that I was ever cool, but you know, just that feeling of like, you know, trying to recapture something from youth.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Youth. What is that?
Youth. The youth.
The youth. Equally, what is the role that you've played that's the furthest from you, and the one that you've had to really dig deep and kind of go, God, I don't know if, you know, grappled with her?
I think it was probably a role I did on a pilot. We shot it last fall, and unfortunately it didn't get picked up because it was a really cool concept. But the role I played in it was a mother of a teenager, and it was sort of a dystopian world, not sci-fi, but it was, because it was quite realistic of what could happen, but a dystopian world. And I was the mother of a teenager and an addict, and just really depressed and stuff. So it was, playing an addict who, you know, almost, you know, does away with themselves is you know, quite a different dark place to go to that I hadn't gotten to explore before. So as well as being a mother, because I like never used to get cast as mothers, because it's like, for me, being ethnic, like I'd go up for roles that was just like, oh, let's, you know, put Jen out for the role of this mother or this mother. I would never get them, because it was always an issue of like, how are we going to get a kid that looks like her, you know? Like, no, it'll probably, you know, they're probably going to cast white for this role, so I'm just not going to bother and stuff. So thankfully, things are changing, however slowly.
God, I'm all for that. You know, let's bring it on.
Well, the UK, I feel like the UK has always sort of been ahead of the game in that way for a long time, you know, just having a more ethnic mix of people, as well as just so many good roles for older women, you know, so.
Yeah, they definitely better, I think, than certainly than LA. But I still think there's room for improvement. You know, there's still there are roles that often go to white men, that could go to women of color, or just to a woman in general. But we are, you know, I think the world is working on it, and we're inching our way there. Speaking of fantastic British shows, the last show I want to talk about before we hand over, I've missed one out actually. It's penultimate show, which wasn't an English show, but based on an English show. The Bletchley Circle was obviously a very famous time in history with the code breakers and things. And then you did the Bletchley Circle San Francisco. And this was, on a personal level, really, really an important project for you because of your family history. Tell us why this particular project kind of affected you in the way it did.
Yeah, well, for the project, just to give a quick overview of it, is you know, just after the Second World War, and there were these code breakers that were working during the war at Bletchley Park, and so this series follows up on them post-war and them utilizing their skills as code breakers to help solve murder. So they're working along.
Oh no. I'll bring you. We know this works though, so that's a good thing to do in a jam. Dun, 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 dun. Old hat at this now. Here we go. Dun, 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 dun. There we go.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so fast this time. Good.
I know, we're old at it. We're getting used to it now. We're like, no problem.
Exactly. Burp, burp. Yeah, so the idea being that these women, these code breakers, are now using their skills in other ways to solve murders and stuff. And so with my character, I played a second generation Japanese American, and whose family had been interned during the war. So I'm sure a lot of people are aware of it, but surprisingly, some people aren't still, right? Because it's not always taught in school, and the history of it that happened in both America and Canada of Japanese people being interned after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And then all the Japanese people, anybody of Japanese descent on the west coast of Canada and America, were then sent into the interior, various different camps all over the States and Western Canada, and kept in these internment camps for a couple of years. They had nothing to do with, the war at all. They a lot of them were born in America or Canada, so they weren't even actually born in Japan. But yeah, obviously a very tragic time in history of people being treated like animals, essentially. Mm-hmm. So, and I did have some personal experience in terms of my own ancestry, of my grandma being interned for a short time before she was able to go back east. And my grandpa's family, they were all interned. So there was something that was, even though we didn't all talk about it very much, like my great aunt now talks about it to me, which I really appreciate. But my grandparents never did, because it was too painful for them, I think, So there was something about that, even though I hadn't been through it myself, there was just this sense of understanding that on a very blood DNA kind of level, I think,
Yeah. And how amazing that you were able to do justice to that, and also to now share with your family, because I think, painful as it is, and coming from a country that had a horrific political past, South Africa, it's important to still talk about it, though. I have sort of mixed feelings. I mean, I don't want to get political, but I have mixed feelings about things being completely torn down and eradicated from history, because I think we need to keep it to know never to go back that way. It needs to be an important reminder of where we've come from and how we move forward, I think. But obviously that's a debate for another day.
But I mean, ultimately what you're saying, I think, like, it's education, right? The education needs to be, like, we absolutely, like, things need to be taught in school that sometimes aren't.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
and, like, in terms of statues being pulled down, I'm all for them being removed, but I don't think destroy them. Put them somewhere where people can look at it and go, shit, I can't believe, look how far we've come from when our grandparents were alive, or our great-grandparents. So anyway, I guess that's a conversation for another show. Our final show tonight that I wanted to talk about is which is on right now here in the UK. You can find it on Alibi, and I binge watched all 6 episodes. It's fantastic. Oh no, please tell me you have not frozen again. Oh, are you there? Yeah, you're there. Can you hear me?
Nope, it's all good. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes. The wonderful Traces, written by the hugely talented Amelia Bullmore, starring Martin Compston, Molly Windsor, and Laura Fraser. And you, for anyone who hasn't seen this, I highly recommend it. It's a really interesting crime thriller, but really from the forensic point of view. And you play Dr. Carrie. Is she a doctor? No, she's a scientist, professor.
Professor. So, like, I guess she's technically a doctor. Yeah, Kathy Torrance. Yeah.
That's right. And you are a professor of forensic anthropology. So how did you prepare for that, from the kind of technical side of this job?
Yeah, well, a lot of reading. Val McDermid, who's a wonderful author who I'm sure you're familiar with, has written, a ton of murder mysteries. And this was actually an idea that she had that Amelia then expanded on and wrote about, so that they worked together on it a little bit in that respect. And so I read, Val McDermott had written a book on forensics, so I read her book. And there's also a wonderful forensic anthropologist named Sue Black, who works in Dundee, Scotland, and she wrote this sort of semi-autobiographical book about forensics, and it was fascinating. And so that was really helpful too, to just to read a bit about the technicalities, but also just about the more sort of human reasons for doing it, you know? So not just like, oh, like this is what we discover and this is how this works, but it's also like, oh, because you're actually bringing justice to a lot of the remains of people that you're finding, you know? So it was helpful to do all that reading.
And it's all set in Dundee in Scotland at Schieffer. Did you film up in Scotland, or did you film up north in Manchester, I think?
I filmed in Manchester or Bolton, like sort of those areas and stuff. I think it was just Molly and Martin that got to go up to Dundee, because they were just mostly exterior shots that, you know, that they needed from there. Otherwise, everything else was, you know, in a sort of makeshift precinct and lab and university, which was in Manchester. So.
I'm very curious how the role came your way, in the sense that obviously you had to audition for it, but it was cast by the brilliant Andy Pryor.
Yes.
For anyone, people who don't really always know about casting, Andy cast all the Doctor Who's as well, and somebody I would love to have on the show, because what a fascinating career he's had. So how did Kathy Torrance find her way to you?
Well, this was like, I owe this all to my agent, my fantastic agent. She had, my dad is English, and so I have a British passport.
Right.
And so my agent had reached out to a number of casting directors in England, I guess, you know, early last year, probably January of last year, and just sort of said, these are my clients that can work legally in England, and here are their demos, and, you know, just so you're aware of who they are, you know? And so not long after that, he'd asked for a tape to, you know, for me to tape this role and stuff. And thankfully it was a role where I didn't have to do a Scottish accent, or that I could be Canadian in it. So that was all right. Not that I wouldn't want to try a Scottish accent, totally want to try it, but that's a whole other can of worms, right? So thankfully the character was, you know, could be from somewhere else. And so that all came about through my agent and Andy's work together. That was really, I owe it to them.
Great. I love that sort of casting and agents reaching out to one another. Did you find the experience working on a British set very different to working on a North American set?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, not that I don't love working in North America either, but I feel like you guys have got it figured out in a way that we're still needing to figure out.
In what way?
It's like, well, just because you're doing like 10-hour camera days, and, you know, like things are just sort of set up in where you're shooting a lot more slowly too. Like, for instance, like here we're often shooting like 8 to 10 pages a day, right? Like when I worked on Traces, we were shooting like 3-4 maybe pages a day.
You're like, this is a walk in the park.
This is amazing. You know, you have so much more time to explore and learn, and plus you're just not there as long, you know, during the day, so everyone isn't as exhausted, you know. So so I found there were a number of things like that, and of course, just like I just love the differences in like terminology even, right? So it's like, you know, here we say like rolling, or, you know, like that kind of thing, cut, you know, like, and then like over where you are, they're just like, what do they say? Turnover. I love it, right? So it's just a totally different, you know, set of idioms and whatnot, and ways of relating, and I loved it. I just absolutely loved every minute of it.
I know, it's so brilliant, isn't it, that we get to do this wonderful job that takes us all over the world. I did a movie in Romania, and the director would kind of go, there would be no action. He would be like, say something, and then he'd just go, go. Go.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's just like, okay, now.
Like, oh, okay, go. And just before I hand over to everybody to ask you some questions, and I have a few here, I was wondering, when we do finally emerge from this pandemic, what is next for you? If you have anything lined up specifically, or what's on your bucket list?
Yeah, well, we my husband and I have been working on we've been writing a pilot together for this show idea we've had for a number of years now. So part of, you know, the sort of self-inflicted and also societal pressure of trying to accomplish and make use of this time has been going to that. It's torture though, because I've always loved writing, you know, just sort of creative writing in general, but structuring something is very new to me. Putting all those ideas and ordering them into a very specific structure, which is an episodic television show, is a whole thing to learn, right? I mean, people go to school for this. So it's challenging to the point where I thought I was a procrastinator before, and now it's just like, wow, yeah, just major resistance, and yeah, I find it really challenging. So that's what we're working on. We're hoping that it will, we will finish it before long. So
is it a comedy? I hope it's a comedy.
Or a dramedy, I guess, is what you would call it. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we look forward to seeing it, and thank you so much for your wonderful time, and
thank you, Suanne,
persevering through all of this technical hell. So yeah. I'm going to quickly hand over. I saw somebody asked a question earlier. There were a few questions right at the top, but somebody asked, who was your favorite character to play?
Oh God, it's so hard to say. Because I just have something good, you know, found something good in all of them, like learned something from each of them. I think just in terms of the most sort of like balls to the wall liberating would probably be Grace, out of Travelers, just because again, there was just no limits to what she would say or do. And so as an actor, that can be really exciting to get to just like be free, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Here's one. What is your most memorable convention experience?
Oh, that's a good question too. Probably like the one I did with you when we were in Birmingham.
Oh yeah.
It was like getting to go all that way. I mean, for you, it wasn't going as far, but still, like, you know, what's it, like a couple hours on the train, I guess. For you,
like an hour and 15, yeah.
but still so much fun, right? Like, we had a great time at that one. And that's one of the great things that, you know, like you're saying, of not just getting to travel the world as an actor, but when you can travel as well for conventions and meet people that have like enjoyed a show that you've been a part of, like it meant something to them. Like it's really cool to have that experience, because as actors, that's what we want. You want to have we want to move people, change people, have it mean something, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Here's one. What was your favorite set of Stargate Universe that you enjoyed to shoot on?
The favorite set? Oh, that's a good question. I actually, the first thought that came to mind was the bridge, which was like the navigation deck, I guess. Just because I have a lot of good memories there of a lot of joking around and tomfoolery and, you know, lack of focus because we were all just laughing so hard, you know. So I think, probably that had a lot of good memories, that spot.
What is the main difference to filming and living in Vancouver compared to Toronto?
You know, I haven't really worked in Toronto because I left Toronto before I started my career in earnest, I guess. Like I did theater there, but so I'm not actually that familiar with how productions are. I imagine it's pretty similar to Vancouver. Whereas like if you're in the UK, then it's quite different, you know, or Romania. You're going to have different experiences, right? So, but I imagine it's probably pretty similar. I just think that the types of shows they shoot are different. Like we have a lot of sci-fi in Vancouver, whereas Toronto, they have a lot of homegrown comedy and feature films. Yeah.
Okay, nicely answered. Let's see, what does this say? I think we've sort of, oh, here we go. Was there break it up. Was there a standout scene or moment from SGU? And that's good because somebody else has asked the question. They emailed that in, so.
Well, I do remember this one time, again, on the bridge. That was where we were. And just to mix things up, Robert Carlyle and Louis Ferreira, we were doing a rehearsal, and they decided to just swap roles for the rehearsal. So that was really fun, watching Louis play Rush and Bobby play what was his name, Colonel Young.
Yeah.
And just like trying to, you know, kind of imitating each other. And it was, yeah, so that was fun, right? Doing a rehearsal like that.
Did he do the accent as well?
I don't think he did the accent. I don't
Right.
think he actually attempted that. It was more just like the attitude.
Yeah,
you know?
mannerisms.
Yeah.
Someone is saying, is it true that you own or used to work in a bookstore? And if yes, did you sell it?
Oh, yes, I did used to work in a bookstore. So there was a bookstore called Biz Books in Vancouver, which was around from, I guess I'm not sure, like 90, I should know this, sometime in the 90s until, sorry, my battery's just running low.
Oh, no. There you go. Ah, you're there. Hurrah.
But yeah, so it was around, so it was around for quite some time, the store, and it was owned by a good friend of mine named Catherine Law Hagquist, who's an incredible actor in her own right. And she had opened this store that specialized in books for film, theater, and television. And so, yeah, so I worked there for quite, you know, probably about 10 years, 9 or 10 years or something. And you know, all the people that worked there were all actors as well. And we're all still friends to this day. And that was a wonderful sort of built-in community that Catherine created. And I owe a lot, I think, to her for that, for giving me that sense of safety and mentorship, you know.
And a place that when you weren't acting, although that's hardly been with you, you've worked so much, but it's nice.
No, but yeah, and at that time I wasn't, so it was wonderful to get to be surrounded by plays and books and
exactly
trying to learn and you know, be better.
Yeah, I'm gonna take maybe just because I think we've answered that one for sure, which was what was your most memorable convention experience, and we've answered what it was like being directed by Amanda Tapping. So last question, because I realize you've been so generous with your time, and we've jumped on and off. We've done sort of an hour and a half again, which is been amazing. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So the final question is, how important is it to be a mentor? And did you have a mentor?
I think it is of utmost importance to have mentorship in one's life, and that's a good segue from the last question, because yes, I was lucky to have Catherine, you know, who, like, it's not like she was like, I'm your mentor, but it was just sort of like that was the relationship, like, as well as friendship, obviously, but I learned so much from her and got advice from her that I just would never have had otherwise, you know, and guidance and help with making choices. And, you know, and it's such a, as you know, as any actor knows, it's a very solitary profession, right? We don't have a department. We're just, you know, we have our agents and we have our hopefully our community of people we meet in class and such, and our teachers. But in terms of someone you can just go to and be like, hey, I don't know how to address this problem I'm having on set, or this happened, what do I do now? Or I just don't want to do this audition, what do I say? You know, things like that, right? Where it's just like the ins and outs of the business, right? So important to have mentorship. And there are a couple of organizations in town in Vancouver that have created these mentorship programs, which is fantastic for actors. So I've been a part of these for several years now, and you know, I'll do it for as long as they'll have me, because I just think it's so important to offer guidance where you can, because it's just such a crazy making industry. Yeah, you know?
Absolutely. So, well, you have delighted us with your choices. It has been an absolute pleasure dipping in and out of your extensive, illustrious, wonderful career. And thank you for being so generous with your time and for persevering with the gremlins. I'm beginning to think it might be me, because it does seem to happen all the time.
I think it's me, but yeah. Well, thank you, Suanne, and thank you again for your generosity with your research and for doing this, for bringing this to people, because I know it brings people a lot of joy to watch different interviews with different people and different shows they've liked. So, you know, it's really appreciated what you're doing, because that's a lot of work. So
yeah,
generosity of time and spirit.
Well, thank you. I really, really appreciate that. And I really hope that we are able to meet sooner rather than later.
I know, me too. And hopefully the convention, because like what's gonna happen to conventions now, right?
I know. So, I think they'll be back. I think it'll take a while. You know, I don't think it's going to happen in the next 6 months or so. Yeah. But I think we'll be back, and we'll be back stronger and better than ever.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so good to see you and talk with you. And yeah, again, hope to see you in person soon in
Thanks.
London, maybe.
Yes, fingers crossed. Tracers too. Hello, Andy.
Hopefully. Yeah,
I could
exactly.
be your long lost sister, cousin.
Half sister.
Yeah, half sister, exactly. Your lover, I don't know.
Totally. Sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And on that note, have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, sleep well.
Yeah, you too. And guys, I will see you next week with Tony Amandala. Very exciting. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you may be. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.